Ubisoft did not do its cult franchise Prince of Persia any favors after taking it out of the spotlight for the sake of new brands like Assassin's Creed. When they tried to bring the series back with a lackluster looking remake of the classic Sands of Time, which then entered development hell, the mood among Prince of Persia fans wasn't exactly enthusiastic. So the announcement of a new 2D entry, seemingly inspired by indie games instead of the first series game, with a tonally dysfunctional announcement trailer, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown wasn't met with the biggest goodwill. Which is a shame because, and here's a hot take, on a gameplay level, it could be an easy contender for the best game in the franchise. The back then new type of cinematic platforming introduced by Sands of Time sometimes wouldn't hold my attention too long after the initial splendor wore off. Its particular platforming approach made certain actions feel slightly automated or held within invisible rails, as if the acrobatics were more sophisticated QTEs. Now The Lost Crown, even as a side-scroller, still features the series' trademark parkouring through ridiculous hallways full of spike traps, except that here players are in full control of all the swift maneuvers, which don't just look flashy, but are just as intense to play, thanks to tight controls which intuitively provide fluid yet responsive movements from the get-go, both in platforming and in battles. The Lost Crown is following the footsteps of so-called Metroidvania games, especially Hollow Knight, in which you explore a gigantic labyrinth where certain paths only become accessible with unlockable abilities. Yet it's not a tried clone. There are a few Metroidvania tropes. Developers might want to rethink that predictable spiel before getting a double jump. But apart from that, main abilities mostly revolve around different types of teleporting, with the sole purpose of spicing up the platforming, the center of the level design. The number of essential abilities is low compared to other games of the genre, which makes exploring the gigantic map feel relatively natural, because blatant upgrade barriers are comparably few. While branching off the main path is rewarded with not always mind-blowing but at least nice bonuses like improved health and abilities such as fire arrows or slow down counterattacks, or finding bits of lore and secret characters which make the world feel whole. Above all, the parkour-heavy design makes for a raw platforming experience with many creative traps, all attuned solely to testing the player's skill without any fluff. It also contains some puzzle solving, where teleports have to be made in a smart way, creating some pretty inventive head scratchers, which are never too obtuse. Similar to the parkouring itself, which is quite demanding but not too frustrating. It has just the right balance for core players. And with little mandatory handholding, the stage and challenge design is almost the opposite of bigger AAA Ubisoft games. Combat feels equally fluid and natural from the moment you pick up the controller. The flexibility of the fighting is almost like a Devil May Cry type game in 2D. Now, compared to platforming, fights might come with a few annoyances, because as good as the controls are, cheap enemy animations can make it feel clunky. Which correlates with the biggest crux of the game. Its low production values are quite apparent and detract from the atmosphere. While its fairy tale backdrops include inventive locations, such as a storm frozen in time, the polygon aesthetics simply don't make for the most atmospheric scenarios, especially compared to other Metroidvania games with a much more appealing hand-drawn graphical style, or Prince of Persia itself with the watercolor look of its 2008 reboot. Lost Crown tries something similar with a Blizzard-esque comic aesthetic, which looks alright in stills, but never comes quite together in motion. It's too bad, because with its superb gameplay flow, if it had a more coherent atmosphere and visual identity, it could have been all around top class for the genre.